after-school audit progress report. Mr. Orson had inquired as to the progress as it relates to the audit. It's not yet fully complete, but I thought it would be appropriate if Dr. Bell and or the auditor who's doing the work to provide the board with an update as to where we are and with an expectation as to when the final audit will be presented to the board.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Chairman, board members. I can't recall exactly when this took place, but in reviewing suggested policies relative to the after-school program, it was a stated desire of the board that an external auditor be engaged to review the program and bring back that audit report for the December 2nd meeting. I went forward and got competitive proposals from external audit firms and signed a contract with the best proposer and bidder on September 26th. And that audit firm, it's Gregory D. Biggs, CPA firm in the Equitable Building downtown. They began the process of taking a look at complying with the scope of the audit that was in the solicitation. And that was to do a financial and compliance operations audit of the after-school extended day program for fiscal years 2010, 11, and 12. And Mr. Biggs began the process of executing that scope of work. The audit objectives stated explicitly were to perform financial and compliance procedures on all tuition and other revenues received by the after-school extended program for fiscal years 2010 through 12, to perform financial and compliance procedures on all, the first one was all revenues, to perform financial and compliance procedures on all expenditures incurred by the after-school program for the aforementioned fiscal years, perform procedures sufficient to report on all of the participating schools' compliance with the after-school operations handbook, local school accounting handbook, DeKalb County School District policies and procedures and applicable federal and state law, and to review and assess the current status of corrective actions implemented and resulting from the internal audit review done in the year 2010, but using 2008's financial information. In the course of pursuing the audit, difficulties arose as related to the staff retirements that are taking place, or one particular retirement under this program, and that slowed the external auditor down. But we did receive this progress report. The current situation is total revenues and expenses in the 10% school district administrative fee reported by the after-school program are currently being reconciled to the underlying accounting records. Financial and compliance procedures have been performed on tuition and other revenues, and the examination to date indicates that the participating schools materially complied with required procedures. Additionally, there are financial and compliance procedures being performed on all expenditures incurred by the program, and a review and assessment of the current status of corrective actions implemented based upon the fiscal year 08 review performed by the DeKalb County School District's Internal Audit Department. But as I mentioned, the retirement of the director of this program has caused a slow up in the process. Now, the external auditor has indicated that he is going to pursue this to have a completed audit in our hands on or before December 30th, hopefully during the middle of the month of December. Okay? So that's sort of the progress report where it is. There was a date to have the original audit effort completed. I think it was November 22nd, which is written into the agreement, but the auditor couldn't get that done.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Campbell.
Dr. Bell, I guess short of having the official audit report, we get some comfort at this point in time that there are no misappropriations and that policy is being followed. Can we assume that, or do we wait until the audit is completed?
As the progress reports indicates, Mr. Biggs is a guy with a great deal of experience doing this type of thing. He is willing to state right now in this progress report that he is seeing substantial compliance, okay? but he didn't come today. He had some conflict, and he, in particular, didn't want to make any absolute statements, okay? So I can't make an absolute statement in response to your question. But he hasn't seen anything, and I'll speak for him for a second, he hasn't seen anything that throws up any red flags at this point in the process.
And what we were looking for is, I guess we'll adopt a policy that says this is how we would hope those funds would be accounted for going forward. That would be a spinoff of the audit report itself, a byproduct of the audit report itself.
His basic tests are to compare progress made relative to the audit review done in 2010 to what he is seeing today, okay, in our FY 2014, to see how much has been done relative to improving the process based on some of the findings of that review, okay? We're doing this at the request of Mr. Orson and the board to see how our present policies are operating. And if y'all will recall, when we first looked at the proposed policies, there was some sort of flow of funds or cash flow changes recommended that, as I said at the time, would go to a sort of a fundamental difference in the way the cash flows into the program if those policies are adopted compared to what we have now.
Thank you.
Mr. Orson?
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear, and obviously I appreciate that you need to get a final report before you can make a conclusion. And just as a reminder, I mean, I think there were a couple things at play in the draft policy. One was at the invitation of the superintendent to memorialize what has been a practice, because I think, as you rightfully found out, the practice, and there was general understanding of the practice, but there was no policy that reflected particularly the 10-90 split, and I think it's healthy for particularly something like that. And I think the policy that's been drafted that we still need to, I guess, officially get to a first reading would, among other things, clarify that, you know, the finance office would have a significant role in ensuring compliance, because I think that's an important part of this, because you have the expertise, and clarify and I think loosen up, because there wasn't really a policy about the ability of local schools to use their share, because the current interpretation, and I think this is where it may be great that there's compliance, this is that they were kind of restricted in the interpretation to things that actually related to the after-school program as opposed to the general academic mission of the school. And so I think one of the goals of the draft policy is to clarify that as long as they're furthering kind of the academic goals of the school, that that's an appropriate use of the money. It's not, it had almost been treated like an enterprise fund, like our food services. It all had to be circular within there. And I think a lot of the reasons these schools have this program is it's a way to generate additional funds to support the general academic mission of the school. So I think that those things sort of come together in the policy, and I think ultimately once you get the findings of the final findings of the audit, whatever tweaks we then have on the draft policy that are required by the financial imperatives will be, I think, in a good position to make. So,
No further discussion. At this time, there is no action to be taken on this item. It will be just updated. There will be an update next month, I'm sure, Mr. Bell.
We'll keep y'all advised of the progress, but we should have the completed report for FY 10, 11, and 12 before the next meeting. Yes, sir.